Happy Friday. You are here for another Game On with Gina and John. You might be asking yourself, where's Gina? There's John. Well, how about here's Gina. Gina, hello. Happy Friday. How are you? Gina, can you hear me now? Is that okay? Tell you what, let's bring everybody else.
Hear me?
Hello. Yes,
I actually can't hear any of it.
Hi.
Give me 1 second. I get to speak down.
Look at the party is on. What's up, y'all? Happy Friday.
Hey, Jen. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Good to see everybody.
Right? Christina, you're joining us from Wooded Glade, it appears.
It is. So I actually change my virtual background every month to something that is appropriately spooky. And my Valentine's Day background, for some reason, wouldn't upload. So you guys ended up with my September background, which was like an apple orchard. So spooky apple picking is what we'll do for Valentine's Day, apparently.
That's fantastic. I'm here for it.
It's better than like the toddler chaos, right?
I don't know. Toddler chaos is pretty authentic, I gotta say, and it pairs so well with the initiatives that you're leading out with Moms in Gaming that I think it's great. Hey, this is the first time, by the way. So great to see people already jumping into chat. This is the first time we've all been on video together. So thank you everybody for being on here, and can't wait to start answering questions and just diving in here as we talk about the side quest when it might be time to consider alternate options, maybe stepping out of games in order to step up in our careers. Gina, you were the progenitor of this idea. Would you like to kick us off and just sort of share thoughts?
Sure. Can you guys hear me, by the way? Okay, cool.
Yes,
Because my audio was a little funky at first. But yes, so I appreciate everyone joining us today. And I think this is a very important topic because it's on our minds. It's the elephant in the room. There's a limited amount of opportunities right now in game dev. Does not mean you have to stray away from your career path, forever. This is just a side quest. It's a stepping stone, if you will. And a lot of us actually don't come from games, and we've kind of, transitioned back and forth, and a lot of people do this as well. I think right now, an important topic is to also identify that people are really having a hard time right now because it's like your identity was built around a certain company, and your coworkers are almost like your family, and your environment is comfortable. You're safe. You have this safe feeling, and then all of a sudden, the rug is basically pulled out from under you. And so I think I want to emphasize the importance of, everyone has their own identity, their own values, their own self-worth, that do not put all your self-worth on a company that you work for or worked for. You guys all bring special things to the table. You have amazing career paths. It's not just one project you worked on. And you're going to have an amazing future. And so sure, you worked on a major AAA project, but that's not all that's you. You have so much more about you. I just want to kind of ask the recruiter audience here, the recruiter panel here, to kind of any additional thoughts you guys want to share about that. I think it's an important topic.
If it would be okay, alongside kind of sharing initial thoughts, if everybody wouldn't mind doing like a super quick intro to just segue in. If it's okay to tag on, we can share our first thoughts and do an intro, maybe go JoJo and then around clockwise. Not just because of the cat ears.
Yeah, of course. Hey, so nice to meet everybody. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm JoJo. I am a senior recruiter at Dreamhaven. Prior to this, I had worked at Riot and Blizzard with Kathy and with Gina, who continue to be my mentors and recruiters who I look up to greatly and admire today. Prior to that, I, like many others in this group, had not worked in the games industry. In fact, it took me a really, really long time, and it was a very convoluted career path to get to games. And so definitely would like to, be here to support you all as you navigate this.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kathy Zuniga. I was not able to attend the last one. I had some technical difficulties, so I'm really excited to be at this one. So I really just kind of want to join for support with the industry going through these very difficult times. I've been working in games recruitment for 13 years now. I've worked at big studios like Blizzard Entertainment, Riot Games, as well as small studios and startups. So I feel like I've had that experience of working in different gaming environments. And this is just the best community. I've worked with Val over at Blizzard. Very glad Val was able to join us today. Worked with Jojo at Riot, and obviously Gina and Christina are very well-known recruiters in our industry. And, I think I've seen, just in my length of career in this industry, I've seen it go through ebbs and flows. There are some years where everyone's hiring and there's a lot of competition, and some years where things slow down and there are hiring freezes. So, I think just in my experience of interviewing so many candidates, it's very possible to go through a rough patch in this industry, maybe do something a little different, and then come back later, come back stronger with a different perspective, different experience under your belt. I've seen it happen many times. So it is not the end. And, it's good to remember that.
I hear press start to continue energy. I just have to say it out loud. Sorry, Kathy. Val, who's Val, and what do you have to say about this?
Yeah, my name's Val. I've been in the games industry. I joined Blizzard back in 2012, and I've known Kathy for 12 years now, which is wild. Not familiar with Jojo and Christina and Gina, although just by reputation, but not personally worked with them. I came from a healthcare IT background, and I really wanted to get out of recruiting because it was soul sucking. But I got lucky to go to Blizzard, and I rekindled my love for the people that I wanted to work with, the companies that I wanted to work for. And so, like Kathy said, it really is a nice industry to be in, because I could walk down to the Blizzard library, talk about comic books, board games, stuff like that. One thing that everyone is seeing here is that it is pretty rough in the industry right now, but this just goes to show how much we're like rallying together. And I've been outside of the games industry. I'm back in the games industry in a tangential way, or adjacent way. And I'm just happy to be here, and thank you for the invitation. And I'm glad I could be here again.
I'm Christina. I have been a recruiter for over a decade as well, in a variety of industries. I think for me, I agree. I think that there's kind of two facets to this. One, I have a partner who is very, very much work identifying. So for them, the company they work for becomes their entire identity. They've been in games for almost 2 decades now, and so they've gone through multiple rounds of layoffs. And frequently there is that identity crisis that Gina kind of touched on when you do lose something you've put your heart and soul into. So I really think setting yourself up as an individual in addition to your company is something that I value and something that I try to practice. So currently I'm a recruiter at Naughty Dog, but I'm also known beyond that, right, as being Christina, who is a recruiter and a mom, and who talks a lot about kind of leadership and development and the way that we empower each other, specifically women. I've worked in a variety of different industries. So I started recruiting at the undergraduate level, and I volunteered in the game space. And then I started taking on games contracts as I worked in fashion. So for me, I worked with a lot of mobile studios, a lot of startup studios, and then also big studios like Disney Interactive at a contract level before going full time at Naughty Dog 2 years ago.
Well, I'll go last. I am probably the person with the least direct gaming experience here. I've never worked at Blizzard. I've never worked at Nintendo. I've contributed financially to those companies for some 40 years, but I've never directly contributed as an employee. I have, though, had the impossible fortune to support the hiring teams that did such amazing work at Apple and Amazon that contributed to those gaming entities, which sometimes we don't think about those as like gaming companies, but holy smokes, Apple could potentially be considered one of the biggest in the world, given the fact that it's one of the most widely used games platforms out there. So that was just an awesome chapter in my life. And now I'm just excited to be here to talk about and really kind of go back to Kathy, Gina, elements of what you said there. There's a lot of people that might be hurting right now. And while this is kind of I think we said chill coffee chat, right? There might be sometimes chill coffee chats can be ones that engage emotionally as well. And that might be us today, because there's a lot of people that are hurting, and there's a reason why we're all rallying together as a community. It's not just because we're having fun. It's because there's a lot going on, and not all of it is necessarily awesome. And today we're talking about just acknowledging the fact that sometimes the best way up is around or out for a minute. And I'm excited to share. This might be one of the few ones of these calls that I actually have some information to share, because I do have the out, like the information about the out. And so excited to share, to answer questions. A couple quick pieces of housekeeping on that note. Folks in chat, please blow us up. Please throw out your questions. As we're talking, you will see comments come up on screen, like our good friend, Mike Knox here. We're just going to feature folks and say, hi, Mike. He says, hello,
Hey,
awesome
Mike.
people. He didn't know he was going to be our demo, but hello as always, Mike. Same with another frequent flyer and rock star, Wendy Prantner. And how about a little Ken White saying love for comic books? Yeah, okay. Love for comic books. We will feature your questions as we go. We want to make sure this is super engaging. You can feel connected to the message. So throw your questions up as we go. I will put them on screen, not to cut anybody off. It could feel that way. It's just to make sure everybody gets to see your words on screen. And of course, Charmaine says, hi, Mike. Look at all this community connectivity happening right now.
Look at love.
All the love. Okay, so let's talk about when it might be time to consider stepping out of games. Has anyone here done that, or has considered doing that, or seen anyone do it effectively?
I have a pretty. Oh, go ahead, Gina.
Sorry, Gina. I'll go real quick. Actually, I have my friend Amy Madden, who is ex-Blizzard, went to Bungie. Unfortunately, she was impacted at Bungie not too long ago, a couple months ago, and she just let me know she actually had an amazing opportunity. Of course, she can't tell us where she's going, but she told me directly, and I was super happy for her. But she's going outside the games industry to a place that she's always admired. It's a consumer products type of place. And so what she did was she explored brands that she really resonated with, like companies that she feels a lot of values, similar values to hers. And so she really kind of dug into the company's culture, started talking to folks who work there, and then found her way into an opportunity that was a perfect match for her. She's also a recruiter. And she's so excited to bring what she's learned from games into another industry. And she said she loves games. She might consider coming back, but she may also fall in love with this company and stay forever. You never know. A lot of us, I thought I was going to be retiring at Blizzard, and that certainly didn't happen. But our destinies change all the time. Our passions and our loves change. So there's other things that we're super excited about. Like I worked at Disney twice as well. Love Disney. Go to the parks a lot of time. That's a passion I can share with a lot of people who work there as well. And so find what you're passionate about. It's not just games. There's things that are supporting games, but also other things you might be interested in. Sorry, so maybe you can go ahead.
So that's the anecdote. Well, actually, it's a really good tie-in. So that's the anecdote that I kind of want to touch on. I always tell people, start at your end goal and work backwards. And I gave that advice to a mentee and that had been impacted, and they said, well, I don't know what to do. And I said, what are you passionate about? Like, let's go back to your core values. What are you passionate about? They're very passionate about integrative technology, new technology, and bringing technology to different spaces. Like, they love the technical aspects of their role. They happen to be an animator. And so I said, okay, knowing that animation is a transferable skill back into games, how can we maintain a cutting edge of maintaining knowledge of animation tech in a different space? And they said, well, let me look on that and kind of browse around. They browsed some ideas and they came back and they said, I accepted a job offer. I wanted to let you know. And I was very excited. I said, okay. They said, I'm going to be a crime scene reconstructionist. Yeah.
Wow.
So they are now taking their high-end gaming animation skills and reconstructing car crashes. They're reconstructing like higher caliber true crime scenes, utilizing their animation. So they're doing the physics simulations for bullet trajectory and blood spatter to help in court cases, which is such a far departure. But the key there is in that they're still maintaining relevancy with the technology they care about that will allow them to pivot back to games, right? When the opportunities are a little bit more widespread. So for me, I was like so floored. I'm like, that is the best use of A, the passion you care about, which is technical relevancy, B, the industry you care about, which is, gaming, and C, like, side note for those that don't, I love true crime. So I was like, also selfishly, I'm like really excited to like see you dive into something that I'm interested in. So for me, that would be kind of thinking about like, what are your passions? What are the things you cared about? Gina, you mentioned your friend really took in the company culture aspect, right? For me, I value autonomy. If I had to leave, I would want it to be in an industry that allowed me to have autonomy and passion, right? To maintain being a recruiter. So really think about what your passions are and ways that you can maintain relevant skills to come back when the time is maybe a little bit more right for you.
It's an amazing example. Like that's the dream, right? I love it so much. And also think about like game engines are being widely used in other industries now. Like I've talked to candidates who are using Unity to do audio visualization and also like product visualization as well for retail. And there's so many applications for game engines that are kind of beyond game development that you can still hone in your skill and still contribute and make an experience for people. A lot of entertainment venues now, like the Sphere, for example, in Las Vegas, are using a lot of these game engine technologies as well. And also on the film side, of course, with Lucasfilm and Unreal and attractions, theme parks, another really closely related experience. Like essentially, you're Millennium Falcon. You're flying a ship in Unreal. Like that was basically, it's a video game. You're playing a video game, but like with other people, and it's the lines are now becoming much more blurred.
Ender's Game, anyone? Ender's Game? No?
Right.
Just saying it out loud. We've got a question actually to throw up on screen here. And there's actually two people asking this question in a slightly different way, but let's go to Alper first and would love to see if somebody would like to take this one. Hello, peeps. I'm wondering about career gaps on CV from the perspective of recruiters and studio leads. Does frankly explaining your situation always work? Interesting word there, always. Anyone want to take a shot at this one?
I will if no one else wants to talk, but I'm also, if someone else wants to go, I'm more than happy to let them. I mean, Kathy, I think you've kind of probably seen this, right? With your experience, like you've been through probably a few rounds of layoffs. Do you want to kind of touch on this one?
Sure. Generally, folks in the industry are very understanding that, it's a tumultuous industry. And usually the person you're interviewing with has experienced the layoff themselves. I remember I'm sort of used to it now, having gone through it a few times. But, like the first ones, I was so nervous to interview and kind of talk about it. And usually the other person also had a similar experience. So you're not alone in that. I think traditionally in recruitment, gaps in resumes are a challenge. Like, I'm not going to deny that. But just kind of knowing we're all seeing the news of layoffs every day or every week. Like the person you're talking to is also someone in the industry being affected by this, and they're generally going to be understanding. Of course, we want to have long stays as much as possible. So there's only so much we can do about that. But I think kind of hanging in there and just being honest about why there are gaps is the best approach.
And I would want to touch on a couple of phrases in there, like the word frankly and always. It depends on how frank you're being and the way in which you're explaining your resume gaps, number one. Does it always work? Maybe, right? Always is such a definitive answer. It's really going to depend on the hiring manager, the length of your gap. Does it line up with industry trends, right? For me, I see a lot of, I'm again passionate about working moms. So when I see people that say, oh, I took a 9-month break or I took a 1-year break, and I say, you had a baby, right? And they say, yes, I did, but I didn't want to tell you. And I go, okay, not a problem. Like that's totally a very valid and reasonable response. But I think the way in which you approach explaining that you were part of a layoff or impacted by part of the industry trends right now, I think will also dictate the receptiveness of that more so than having the actual gap displayed on your resume or CV, if that is helpful.
It's interesting too, thinking back to times where there was big economic uncertainty. 2007 and 2008 was a real interesting time. I might be the only one with enough gray in my beard to have been doing this then, but it was a real interesting time. And for 2 or 3 years afterwards, you didn't really see a lot of resumes that didn't have a gap. And so it was pretty commonplace. What I loved about that, it was an era of compassion, right? It was an era of understanding that stuff happens, and you almost had to assume positive intent on the part of the candidate. Let's just call a spade, Alper. Kind of, there's a possibility that an element of your question could be, do people think I got fired? And that's a tough perception, right, to deal with, because historically, when there's jobs falling off of the trees and everyone could just work however long they want, that's how people might perceive it. I completely align with Christina's perspective here inside of games, and especially outside of games. If you look at broader tech, there are subsections of tech that are being hit as hard as games and being shaken up almost as much, if not even more in some cases. And so in those same spaces, just like games right now, when you've got sometimes 1 in 10 people have been displaced by no fault of their own, recruiters and hiring managers, they simply can't afford to look past those people. And so I think it's how you tell your story. You've got cover letters to do that. You've got messages on LinkedIn to do that. To some extent, you've got your resume, but that's probably not the place to really dial in on that element of your story. That's where you claim your success and state your qualifications. But I think that deciding how you want to frame that narrative is arguably the most important part of it. And there are times when that can be a benefit to you. You can use that perceived weakness as a strength.
That's a great point, John. And I think there's also, I've seen a lot of people on their actual resumes say like layoff, and that's a very quick way. And transparency always is typically the way to go, and just be honest with the recruiter. We're here to help. We're here to help you. And if you want to tell us your story and kind of what you've gone through, like, we're here to kind of help put the best foot forward for you in front of the hiring manager, and we can tell that story for you as well. So just be honest with us, and we'll do our best to help you in the best light. And again, you can put a really quick blurb on your employment history could help with that sometimes as well. But it's at this point it's very commonplace. I mean, this maybe 3-4 years ago, where we were so used to people at AAA companies for like 15 years, and at this point, everyone's changing opportunities. It's very common that hiring managers have no concerns about it. They're used to seeing that. So if people are worried about that, everyone gets it. They feel the pain, they understand, and they're very empathetic.
I will add one additional point too. Even this happened to me in my experience in the interview process too. Even with layoffs, right? Sometimes you still have to do what's in the best interest of you, your life circumstance, your family, etc. And that might mean taking some short jobs. So sometimes I've seen people on resumes have a lot of really short jobs. And people are very concerned about, okay, how does this appear when I have a 1-year stint, a 6-month stint, a 3-month stint, a 3-month stint, a 6-month stint, while you're trying to find a full-time role. And that's happened to me. And I told a recruiter who asked me, hey, it appears you job topped a lot, in this duration of time. And I said, it does appear that way. And I said, and if you looked at my husband's resume, who is full, every single one of my new start and stops aligned with his layoff schedule. And they said, that makes sense. And then we moved on, right? Because that's the reality of the situation. It wasn't that I was being flaky or I couldn't keep a job. It really was, at the time, he was the primary breadwinner, and every time the games industry got hit, we would relocate. So we relocated San Diego to LA to New England, right? And that meant I needed to find new employment in those cities. So I would just be mindful of, again, how you're presenting that and really partnering with your recruiter. Like, I think all of us are here to really champion you to the hiring managers. That's, I think, at least for me, like one of my core values when working with candidates. And so if you tell me your story, that helps me better articulate your story to hiring managers and really help set you apart in the process.
So well said. We have a few questions that are actually pretty similarly themed. And you won't be able to see all of them on screen. And in some cases, it anonymizes someone's name. So we won't be able to address you by name, but thank you, anonymous LinkedIn user. Thank you for giving us your time. My last position was as a producer in the gaming industry. When I compared job listings between this industry and something comparable, like in tech, how reliable is being able to display the experience when looking to transition back into gaming? Does seeing that experience on applicants' resumes and CV become less valuable compared to other applicants that have managed to remain completely within the gaming industry? So basically, does my experience count for less if I'm trying to get back in when weighed against somebody who's still here? Wow, great question, anonymous user. If you want to share your name, by the way, we'd love to address you by name.
Does anyone want to take that question? Start off.
That's a great question. I don't think that I know of any game studio or anybody who would penalize somebody for stepping outside of games and then coming back to games at all whatsoever. Again, just like a lot of us here have said, it's an unfortunate fact, that the industry is sort of the way that it is right now. And so we're not going to judge you. We're not going to judge anybody harshly at all this whole panel is really about, side quests, and it's about, this is the topic that we're discussing at hand. So, it doesn't diminish from or take away at all from your prior games experience.
And I would say too, that goes back to the anecdote I shared, right? Like, how are you maintaining relevancy with transferable skills back to the game space? So I could see if someone says, I was an animator and now I've been out of the game for 5 or 6 years because I went to a completely different industry. In that sense, sure, maybe the tech has been updated. Maybe because you haven't been utilizing those skill sets, that could be with a strong asterisk, a potential instance where another candidate would potentially have more relevant skills than you because of that side quest. But I think that if you're looking in the same vein and in like, for example, you're moving from games to big tech, that's a very comparable lateral move, as opposed to saying I went from games and then I became a sous chef for 6 years. And you're like, oh, okay, maybe we start a mobile cooking game and that will be very beneficial. But it won't necessarily help you in like a Naughty Dog Last of Us piece, right? So really thinking at those transferable skills, but I think those instances are going to be much more outliers than anything else. As long as you're making sure there is some level of transferable skill or relevancy to the industry. I have a mentee who has taken a job at a nonprofit. She was a recent graduate. She's a character artist and a producer, and she has taken a nonprofit role. She loves it. She's very, very happy there. She wants to be there for the next 3-ish years. And I asked her, great, how are you going to maintain your relevancy when you want to come back to games? And she said, I'm going to continue to work on my portfolio and sell my pieces via Patreon, while additionally being part of IDGA, Women in Animation, and continuing to do charity streams. And I was like, excellent. Those are all ways that you're utilizing your time to stay relevant, right? And make sure that even with whatever career path you choose as your side quest, you still have a way to tie it back to games and prove your relevancy and bring additional external skills that you wouldn't have had if you had left or stayed in the game space. So again, it could go either way. It could be a positive because you're bringing something completely new that maybe is a blind spot that we hadn't seen before from another industry. But I think as long as there's something transferable there, it wouldn't hurt you. And again, I do think, like Jojo said, we all understand. We know what's going on. For most of us, I think this probably isn't our first round of layoffs, right? I've talked about that on streams before, like 2004, right? 2010, 2014, now. It happens. So none of those, I think, will surprise or shock us, especially if there's a different comparable role on your CV or resume.
Yeah, for sure. And then just to add to what Christina said, so I think you were the one who was saying earlier about storytelling, right? And so that's so key. And this is true whether you're looking to get into games for the first time, whether you're looking for your next job in games, whether you're looking to step out and then back into games. So it is about the way that you present your personal story and the way that you frame, kind of your message, your brand, your strengths, your values, and your priorities. And so, yeah.
I want that as like a bulleted list. Like the check boxes should be what did you say? Passions, strengths, priorities. I'm like, whatever. I'm like, I need that on like a wall. Like I need that like in a motivational poster.
We all do.
Are you in alignment with these 5 things that Jojo listed?
Can we turn that into a character sheet, like a D&D slash
Oh my
Baldur's
gosh,
Gate
that'd
character sheet,
be
and say
so
like,
amazing.
I've always had a dream, by the way, of an ATS that's completely Dungeons and Dragons themed. No one should ever make this, ever. But if someone did, I would buy it. Just to say that out loud.
I want it.
Here's a question. And I'd love to throw this one at Val and Kathy. So we're talking about getting back in, but planning your path out before you get back in. Do either of you think this is a great idea or a bad idea to say, let's say the crime scene reconstruction person, right? Stepped out. So from Christina's amazing example, can you think of any ways that person could use those fungible skills to get back into games based upon your recruiting experience?
Well, I'm currently working for a really awesome company called Yoda Games, and we are doing a crime drama open world game. So I could see a crime scene experience actually maybe being very relevant for our project. And with, projects like what we're working on that are early in development and maybe there's not a lot of awareness in the industry, there's a lot of other studios also working on cool projects that you may not know, but that exist. You could have just the kind of right experience for those. And until you get out there and start talking to people and, kind of like, hey, what are you working on? What's up and coming for your studio? Or, maybe like some indie games out there too, doing new things. You might have just the very unique thing that project needs. And, till you talk to people, you won't really know.
I want to point out that was not planned. I didn't even know that your studio was working on that, but that's like such a perfect. I'm like, I could not have planned this better if I had tried.
It's amazing. That's the thing. Like to your point, guys. Like we don't know what people are working on. I mean, no one knows what we're working on in Haven. So that's why networking is still very key. Like no matter what people tell you, networking is still number one of like how you can really kind of find out what potential project you might be able to work on or roles are coming up. We don't actually post all of our jobs either. A lot of companies don't post all their jobs. And so it's really based on the kind of the referral system and networking and who's out there, like people that actually people know. And if you're not building your brand, if you're not telling your story, then we don't know who you are. We can't help you if we don't hear your story. And the more we hear about you, so if you're posting on LinkedIn, for example, then it helps us kind of like figure actually that person could be really great. And you don't even know that we're trying to pitch you for this job because you had no idea what we're working on. So we're actually doing a lot of work behind the scenes that people don't even know about. Like we're literally pitching hundreds of candidates who don't even know that they're a candidate. And I wish I could tell people that, but it's a lot of work that's being behind the scenes because we have amazing projects they need talent and we just can't tell the world that we're working on.
That's what a cool perspective. Like we might be candidates and not even know it based upon the stories we're sharing, right? Like Kathy, how excited would you be if you saw somebody out here talking about like, hey, I just want to share my story. I stepped out of games and now I'm a crime scene reconstructionist and I can't wait to get back in. You're like, what? I just heard that I just filled a job right now, right? Like I just heard that I just built my studio with the best hire I could have ever made. And that person had no idea just by sharing their story that they were becoming your unicorn, right? Like your purple squirrel, which is a recruiting term that isn't used as much anymore. But if anybody ever wants to play with that and define it, I just want to throw a couple of resources up on screen while we're talking here and sort of cycle through so everybody has a chance to scan these as we go. First, as always, if you look in your top, whichever side of the screen this is for everybody, there's Amir's resources. This is, of course, all of the free mentoring, all of the free job interview practice, all of the everything that you will ever need, whether you were laid off, could get laid off, are in the industry, want to be in the industry. It doesn't matter. There's something in there for you. I would strongly recommend going in and checking it out. Second is a resource that you'll see now on the bottom of your screen. That's Chris Tran. If anybody here is familiar with Chris, we probably all are. He appears everywhere. He's amazing. He's like Lakitu on a Mario Kart track, always coming in and saving people. It's amazing. Chris actually does offer incredible mentoring. And Chris gave me a bunch of these sessions just when he just got started out, and it was amazing. And I just have to say, firsthand, having benefited from working with Chris, true visionary. And he uses a term called win conditions, which is why he came to mind. He always talks about how, what is your win condition in an interview, in an informational interview, in your simply just chatting with somebody at a game convention or on LinkedIn. Keeping in mind what you want to achieve is really important because that way you can know whether or not you're making that happen. A great example being, is my win condition joining a company with really stable employee positive culture? Or is my win condition making a ton of money? Those things aren't necessarily exclusive. In my experience, they can be, because it costs a lot of money to have like a really amazing set of benefits and all of these rich environment where you get all this stuff. Well, you need to know which one of those two you're looking for, because you can't apply to every job in the world and you can't chase every single awesome conversation that you start. So that term win condition, it's just so gaming positive and such a like Valorant-esque thought process. I just had to share it out loud right now before we see our next question. Before we jump to our next question, does anybody have anything to share on anything we've talked about so far?
Just +1 to Chris Tran. I follow him. He's great tips and tricks. So please do give him a follow.
Val, you're getting some love for your Orphea in the background right there.
Awesome. I love it when people recognize Heroes of the Storm.
Was she originally a HOTS character? She's like an OG, like from the Nexus, right?
She's from the Nexus. I think she's one of 3 specifically made for Heroes of the Storm. She's good.
Yeah, she's broken. I hate playing against her, and I love Heroes of the Storm. It's my favorite MOBA by far.
Awesome.
Okay, let's jump into a question. What do we have here? Do you see more? Okay, here we get to really start to rub the crystal ball a little bit. Do you foresee more opportunities within the VR and AR space due to the new Apple Vision Pro vision devices? Ooh. Hashtag BuzzFeed. Let's talk about Apple Vision Pro. Anybody want to take a snap at this? If not, I'm happy to talk about Apple stuff.
Yeah, I'll take a stab. My buddy, he was the creative director on the biggest VR MMO game on the Quest, and I think there are a lot of barriers to entries right now. That there's some potential to it, but there's just still too much. Like you hear the rumors about people returning the Apple Vision Pros because they're too heavy. Like how can you work? How can you game like that? And other things is just the physical limitations of actually having VR. I think are very challenging as well. Like he would be working in that environment, and if he had to go to a meeting, he'd have to take it off. He'd have to put it down. He'd have to go into a meeting, and then he'd have to go back in there. And he wears glasses, so it's very difficult for him to do that. Long story short is I think some of the VC funding is starting to dry up in terms of funding VR games. That I think it's still got a way to go. But that's just my personal thing. I think the Apple Vision Pro might add to it, but and I think Paul Merlucky said it. He's like, unless it gets to a point where everyone can just like afford to have it, it's not going to take off. But I love it. I would want one if I had $3,500 to spare. I have an Apple Vision Pro, but it's a kind of inaccessible still. But that's just me.
I want to piggyback a little bit and go Kathy.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say I just want to tie this back to something that Gina you opened with, right? Is I think that this illustrates that there is potential in effective bleed from the games industry into a multitude of other arenas, right? So whether that's tech, right, with Apple Tech, whether that's crime scene reconstruction, whether that's what have you, right, entertainment, film, like we are starting to see so many aspects of the gaming industry starting to pop up in other arenas that I think that in general we are going to start to see more opportunities that do have transferable skills versus games being a very isolated technical component would be kind of the piece that I would add there.
My previous studio was Nexus Studios that did a lot of amazing and creative work with AR, VR apps, working with major clients like Marvel, Google. They did really groundbreaking stuff. And when I was recruiting in that space, I reached out to game developers from AAA and from indie and from so many different areas that weren't necessarily thinking about VR, AR, because there's so much transferable skills. And because of the nature of that industry, it's a little different than like working in AAA games where I tended to hire for full-time roles that, they would stay with us for many years. In AR, VR games, we hired contract. Short contracts, sometimes 6 months, sometimes 9 months, sometimes even shorter than that. There were some really small projects that was such a quick turnaround, such a quick way to show like we made something, which was very different from AAA that takes many years. And it was a great way for folks kind of in between AAA studio jobs to get some short contract work and get paid, while they found their next thing. And then also have a great portfolio piece that could be turned around quickly, as opposed to, waiting many years to be able to show anything that you've worked on. So, if you are kind of coming from a long stay at a AAA studio, do look at those small companies like that that are making branded content, AR, VR, and similar sort of applications, because they're really creative too, and they could use the game dev skills very much so.
There's a sub industry that I've really just been fascinated with recently. And Christina, this goes to one of the points that you were a version of one of the points that you were sharing, which is that we live in a world that is increasingly gamified. And we're actually, those of us that have little ones in our lives, to whatever extent we're raising those kids, we're raising kids that are not just digital natives, they are like gamification natives. And Charmaine Duff, who's hopefully in the audience still, she and I were chatting about this on a call earlier today, and how differently when we start to really think about how life looks for these kids. And we're very, very smart people are already thinking about this because they're thinking about how to build the things that people will want to buy and be part of next. And I shared a resource this morning alongside Alex Gombos's Feature Friday, which is called Winter. And I noticed that once I signed up for this thing a few weeks ago, I have gotten probably 10 invites a day to basically consult with companies that want to understand gaming. And these people have nothing to do with gaming, but they want to understand the methodologies and ideologies and thought processes that drive this industry, because they want to create a similar level of adoption, of engagement, of excitement, really a dopamine kick, right? Whether you're Doritos or your Apple Vision Pro, you want to have that same kind of experience, that stickiness of product adoption. And that has been really fascinating to me, because I didn't think that like consumer packaged goods would have that much to learn from games. But there's a lot of people with a bunch of money who really want to learn a lot about what we're doing, and not just to like create the next Mountain Dew Code Red. Christina.
I literally was just thinking to myself, I was like, you cannot bring up the Aubrey Plaza Baja Blast commercial, even though it features all of the things we care about, right? Dragons, visual effects, right? I was thinking, like, what are other relevant industries? And I was like, oh man, like we're seeing, like you said, gamification in so many areas, like Aubrey Plaza riding a dragon in Dungeons and Dragons, like esque in a Baja Blast commercial. I was like, we're not going to go there. And then you just paved the way for me. So thank you for that. Bring in the tie-in. Have a personal brand, even if it's Baja Blast, and like being a spooky mom, if that's your brand, own it. The other thing I was going to say too is John's right. There's so many industries gamifying right now. Like we've seen it in like the health space, health and fitness space. Like if you're anybody who's been to an Orange Theory class knows they have opened an entire division at Orange Theory to enhance the gamification. And I've seen people like I passed jobs. One of the questions I saw in chat earlier was about like, when do you offer a job to someone if you should or shouldn't, or what does that look like? I just send them. I say, hey, I know that this may or may not be up your alley, but here you go. Like here's an Orange Theory post about game enhancement and develop, and you're a production manager. Like this might make sense to helping you produce the gamification. I have somebody who went to the LA Kings to do animation and characters and caricatures of the NHL hockey players, right? For social media. Like who would have thought that like a character artist would be sculpting out 3D renders of the LA Kings characters, right? Like these are things that like we wouldn't have thought would be tied into games, but literally we're starting to see it in so many arenas. So none of us are, some people might be. I don't think anyone is only a gamer, right? I think you have other interests, whether that is Baja Blast or parenting or what have you. Like Gina said, follow those passions that you care about. Like Jojo said, like look at your passions and what are ways that either you can create a role for yourself, right? Or that you can bring something additional to the table. With the crime scene reconstructionist, he said, I have to learn how to do physics simulations. And he's like, and I'm an animator. But I'm like, to Kathy's point, we're currently looking for a physics programmer. This person would be very early level in that, but there's not a ton of physics simulation programmers out there. But now having somebody who can both animate and do physics simulations, that's a massive asset. And that's going to put them ahead of competition that's coming in the next 3 to 5 years on either side, right? So really thinking about the tie-ins, the win conditions, the long-term goals, kind of everything we're talking about, it actually does tie in across multiple industries. So I hope that is beneficial or helpful in tying that in.
The statement that random LinkedIn user makes below here is Fidelity just made a Roblox game. Played it. It was fun. Fidelity, not a AAA studio to my knowledge. I think that's where my 401k sits. I don't know if that's where my main is being played. But what do we have here? The metaverse, right? And there's a word that we were using a lot before AI came along and basically ended that conversation. But we were actually talking a lot about this in our recent Future of Games call with a bunch of these Web3 folks, some of whom are actually in chat right now. So thanks to everybody for bridging these gaps. But you're actually creating an actual point here, which is the fact that as the future of this metaverse comes to life, what is the metaverse? It's a game. It really is. What is blockchain? Well, in a lot of ways, it's items, if you will, that you've earned one way or another, whether that's by grinding or by buying or by mining. And now that's yours forever. So in a lot of ways, like, we really are going to inhabit a more gamified world, even more than just how we're keeping track of things. It's how we're looking at things. So if the Apple Vision Pro really kicks, or the next gen doesn't have a cable and weigh several pounds, we could very well be living in that world, and we have to have people that build it, right? There's nowhere near enough people to build this metaverse that we need right now. So there might be a way to step out of games into a place that's moving toward games. Like, you get off of one ship and you actually get on one that's moving faster in the direction that you want to go, which is possible.
That's a good point. And there's also wearable technologies, right? There's a ton of, like, Apple Watches have gamification in them as well. Like, people don't even realize they've hired like designers, like UX design, UI designers, to help like make this experience more something that we could be engaged in. And so wearable technology is a huge potential area as well for game developers.
Ken White makes another excellent point regarding game competition. Over 14,000 games released just on Steam last year. Wow, that's arguably the easiest, cheapest platform to ship on overall. I think that's probably true. I can't think of a lower barrier entry, maybe itch.io, but I mean, Steam's about as good as it gets, right? Is that a perspective shared by the crew here?
100%. People are shipping their own games. They're creating indie games. We actually made an offer to someone last year he shipped his own game. He hired a couple artists, and he had some great reviews on his game. We actually were able to download a demo and write straight from Steam and check it out, and we were super impressed with his work. So it is 100% viable. It is professional work because you are literally shipping your own game, and you had to bring on other people to collaborate with. And so that's a great way to work on something on the side while you're also looking.
Yeah, one of my favorite games on Steam right now is in beta. I think it's called Death Must Die. And I was like, who made this? This is great. There's one person out in Romania. I was like, well, good for you. That's awesome. But whenever I talk to students,
oh, sorry, go ahead, Val.
Yep. Yeah, and I think you hired MIDI engineers, and you got artists to help out and stuff like that. But yeah, it's definitely like a very very low barrier to entry. But whenever we talk to students or people who want to get in the games industry, and all of us have said this before, it's like, great, have you made a game? Like, find other people to make a game with and ship it on Steam, and then you could point to the game design managers that this is what I worked on. They go, oh, that's really clever. We should talk to this person.
Two points to follow up on that. One, John, fun fact, I'm Romanian, and the Romanian games market is popping off. Like, it is, I'm surprised at how many studios and developers are coming out of Romania. We had an opportunity. My husband was working with a company that was partnering with a studio in Romania, and we had an opportunity to go, and I was like getting ready. I was so excited. I was like, we're finally going to go visit like the land of my grandparents. And come to find out, then he got laid off, and we're never taking that trip, but it'll come eventually. Which I suspect is why I'm probably a little bit vampire obsessed and like vibey, right? I think it's just hereditary. my Romanian is showing. But also I want to make a point, Val, to what you said about making your own games, right? I know somebody who was working for a company out of Romania, and they had this big meeting to do a Roblox platform game. And they said, okay, we're going to meet with all these game devs from Roblox. 4 of the people in that meeting were 16-year-old kids. And the kids were like, what are we doing? Like, we just made this game for fun because we wanted it, right? So when thinking about games too, like, we're seeing younger and younger and younger people who can explore and make their own games. You've got things like Scratch that's introducing elementary school kids to pre-coding and game dev and game design opportunities. So people like, my toddler, John, our kids are going to grow up in a world, to your point, that gaming and gaming creation is easily accessible to them. So I'm curious just to see like long term, like how this is going to impact like the industry overall, right? When having made a game is as easy as like, yes, I once wrote an essay, right? Like, what is that going to look like? I don't know. But it's something fun to kind of think about. So yeah, I mean, there's plenty of platforms to practice and kind of get that experience too. Like, have you made a game? It's just unique.
Well,
in the
especially in a
long
world
run.
where we ask ourselves, what is education worth, in an era where AI realistically can do so much of what we've historically gone to school for 4 years to learn, right? And that should it scares me when I say those words and hear those words, right? It should. However, just to say out loud, I don't believe that AI will replace people anytime soon. I think AI will replace people that don't use AI, personally. But it's so funny going back to conversation with again Charmaine, Tina Mary. If anybody knows Tina Mary out of Vancouver, she just founded a brand new studio. She's a long time EA, just all these amazing things. We've been talking a lot about what it means to be a parent in games and to think about like this world our kids are growing up in and this UGC economy, right? That's just really starting to exist, user generated content. And I know this isn't the call about like how to raise your kids around games or anything like that, but it does seem to be a theme. And it might be something worth thinking about because user generated content is not just going to be a games thing. It happens to be like many technologies. It starts in games and then it kind of grows everywhere else. But UGC has impossible power in so many other parts of this world. Music was probably the first place that it existed, Spotify and others. There's going to be an Etsy storefront of skills and creativity at some point. And looking for that thing, if that's where you want to go to take the spirit of games, but to apply a different skill set that's maybe in a more stable sector, that's very possible. I want to share one more skill on screen, and then I'll stop talking. And one more, I should say, resource on screen. That is one that comes up on most calls about ATS application. That is Skill Syncer. There it is up there. This is the tool that you can use to automatically take a job description in your resume and make it read well in an ATS. Not every single place out there is going to devote the time to make sure that recruiters are able to look at every resume, which please do. If you're a company, please invest in that way, but not everybody does. This will help you get through the ATS force field, as it were.
awesome.
Along this topic, how I've usually spent my downtime when I was unexpectedly hit by layoffs. I love games and I like to stay busy, and for me, it was perfect to learn a new skill. So at different times, I took ZBrush classes through YouTube Academy for free. I also took Harvard Online's Computer Science 101 class, which is free, by the way, and it's Harvard taught. So there's along the lines of someone asked the question of where to find resources. There's a lot out there. I didn't do it myself, but I have talked to people who did the Unreal Fellowship. Unreal offers a lot of opportunities to learn the engine. The engine is free to download and play around with. There's a lot of great things you can be learning out there. I took an Art Center extension course for UI UX designer with a really great instructor, Stefan Dubé, who has worked on a lot of great games and whose portfolio is amazing and was very responsive to like asking additional questions. So I got to like kind of prototype my own UI for a game, and just that's how I've spent my unemployment time. And it all kind of like ties into games and the industry, and wasn't sure where I would apply it, but kind of there's a lot of great other resources out there that I'm blanking on right now that to be learning new things. There are a lot of engines that are free to download, and Reddit game dev. You can ask questions. People are very helpful if you're stuck on something. I've gotten unstuck in trying to like make a rig or things like that is not inherently something you just kind of know how to do, and someone out there has helped me. So there's a lot of great community around game dev, just even for learning purposes.
Kathy, you're not going to believe this, but check this out. So I did that same course and loved it. And I just went into the portal to see what else they're offering. And Harvard, I don't know how long they've been offering this, but they have a free CS50 Intro to Game Development that you can sign up for. Apparently right now, it's 12 weeks long, self-paced. Many schools apparently will actually honor this. You make a game and you do a deep dive with like industry celebrities. So boy, there's something you can do if you're taking a step out onto a side quest, right?
And we're not getting paid for this, by the way.
Yeah,
This is endorsed, but we're not getting endorsed. This is like all
Yeah.
organic, real time, by the way.
This was Googled 47 seconds ago.
I will say too, there's a lot of companies right now, because of the state of the game space, they're actually offering like free resources, right? So I know that like GeoGen, Embergen, the whole like Jenga FX group, they're basically like, if you've been impacted, email us and we'll give you free access to all of our tools, right? So they just posted about it. I mean, I literally just saw it yesterday. But they are willing to, so it says like, if you're an effects artist in games, you need flippics for fire, smoke, explosions. If you're, affected in any way and you want to update your portfolio, alpha terrain tools, you name it, if they can help you with it, they're offering it, right? There's like, just email us and we'll hook you
That's
up.
amazing.
So there are tons of even companies now that recognize the unique impact of this particular layoff round. Again, the layoffs in the game space are not uncommon. They're pretty cyclical, but this one is definitely, at least in my experience, over the last 5-6 years, the worst that I have seen, and kind of as an auxiliary partner in the last decade and a half, the worst that I've seen. So many companies are willing at this point that we didn't have in the past. We didn't have in the past companies. Weta did a workshop a while ago, and some Weta artists did a workshop a while ago for people who were laid off, right? So we haven't seen that in the past like we do now. So there are definitely resources out there to find and utilize as you have some downtime to really hone your skills, especially if you are looking to kind of take that sidestep and then come back.
Excellent resources there.
Well, thank you for touching on that, by the way, Gina. Yeah, none of this is sponsored. We are not affiliated with and can't necessarily endorse the quality of any of these programs. Harvard, though, probably does a pretty good job. I'll just go ahead and say that. We're in our last couple minutes here, y'all, and the chat is still kind of going. Here's the beautiful thing. This chat lives on, much like my heart from Titanic. It goes on. And so we can continue this chat on LinkedIn, and everybody please keep them coming. Everybody here is able to jump in and keep it going. But maybe we go round robin, kind of final thoughts. I'll share mine. This has been super enjoyable. I'll speak only for myself. Thank you everybody for coming and showing up and creating a great conversation. And maybe I'll pass it to Kathy and we go around the circle. What do you think?
Sorry, am I answering a question or just kind of chiming in?
No, just like final thoughts in our last couple minutes.
I see. Well, thank you so much for everybody for joining in and taking the time to talk to the community. Everybody's here is volunteering their lunch break, by the way. So we're all doing this on our own personal time, and just goes to show you how much this community cares. And we'll get through this tough time in the industry and hopefully have a much brighter future in games. We're all gonna still love games no matter what happens.
How about Val?
Yeah, to Christina's point, this has probably been the biggest one for a multitude of factors, and I know that a person asked what's been going on. There was a very, very, very large company that bought up a lot of studios, and their funding didn't come through, and so they let go of really good legacy projects, legacy studios, and stuff like that. And so I think it's an aberration, but it really stinks. I've been doing this with Kathy like 12 years, and there have been layoffs, but it's usually, hey, the funding didn't go through for Irrational Games or whatnot, so the whole studio has to shut down. I haven't seen it impact such large studios like this all across the board. Destiny, Blizzard, Riot, all of them. And it's a very hard time, but I think, and I've said it before, is I do appreciate the fact that we do care about one another in this industry, and so we're always sending out good vibes and all of our time here, and I'm just grateful to be here and humbled.
So, how about Jojo? I know you have to jump to the meeting, so go ahead.
Yeah, just wanted to say thanks to everybody once again. I feel like I'm, out of this panel, I'm probably the most junior. And so I'm very much a student of recruiting and a student of the industry. And so every time that I get to be in the presence of you all, I know that I certainly learned something and that I take away some insights. And that's very, very much appreciated. And I'm very grateful. And to the audience as well. I think we're all learning together and growing together and navigating this very unprecedented situation the best that we can, right? And so I'm really grateful that we've had the chance today to talk about, lateral career moves and what that looks like, kind of giving yourself the challenge and the opportunity to explore different things outside of gaming, the reassurance that, a lot of us have done it as well. And just to be there for each other and to be resources and a source of support for everybody. So just thank you all once again for being here.
Well said. Yeah, Steve?
I think I have nothing but echoing sentiments across the board. I too am always super thankful to be part of our group and to interact with some of the people that follow our content and care about the game space and really bring unique questions for us to really consider, because we don't always know what you want to know. And when you have kind of a large network, it's sometimes hard, right, to get to every single question. So it's always just the best arena, I think, to have that kind of full broad spectrum perspective. So I'm always thankful to be a part of this and gracious, and so glad that you guys continue to support and show up. Key takeaways, you're right. I think that this isn't the end all be all. If you have to step out of games, it is not the death sentence to your career, I think, is the biggest takeaway. And then I would also say there are many ways in which you tell your own story. So really getting comfortable before obviously you have to make ends meet. That is real. But I think that that's probably something is finding your personal story and your personal brand, and then taking that when you come back to the game space.
Thank you. I think it's it, everyone. I really appreciate everyone coming in and joining us for really good discussions today. I learned a bunch of things from you guys as well. And I think we'll continue these conversations. We'll have another topic next time we go around, and I really appreciate everyone joining us today.
Cheers, y'all.
Thank
See you in a couple
you.
weeks.
See you, everybody.
Bye.
Yeah.